Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This evening is sponsored by the Black Bookstore Collective, and we're here this evening with none other than actress and author Garcelle Beauvais. And we all know we are, isn't she pretty? Oh my goodness. We all know that she is a pop culture icon. She's a Hollywood actress famous for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But nonetheless, tonight she's going to go into deep conversation about her frank, funny, and fearless, I love that word, memoir about her life, Love Me As I Am. And the beautiful woman who's going to moderate her this evening is none other than ABC News Live Prime first ever streaming newscast. World News Tonight is the host of that, none other than Mrs. Lindsay Davis. And just briefly about Ms. Davis, because she's very impressive. She's an author too, as well, of 4 books. So we have to talk to her off the record about that. But none other than that, she's a graduate with a degree in psychology from the University of Virginia and a master's of art and communication from New York University. And she is a powerhouse on ABC News. So ladies, I want you all to enjoy yourselves this evening and give us a fun-filled conversation of Love Me As I Am.
All right. Well, it is just an honor to be here next to Garcelle. Oh my goodness, who I met and just instantly you became a friend in my head. And I think that that's so true also in the pages of the book. First of all, it's so well written. It sounds like your voice. I think that you draw people in because you're just so frank and relatable and real. And it's so vivid. I could actually picture you as a little girl when you're talking about being in Haiti and picking fresh flowers and eating tangerines. And so let's start there, because I think that a lot of people don't even realize that you didn't come to the United States until later, around 7 years old, right? And didn't know any English, learned by watching Sesame Street. So talk about that first journey coming from Haiti to the United States. Wait, I think you're muted. Garcelle. I don't know. Can you guys hear Garcelle? Let's see.
How about now?
Yes, we got
you. Great. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Black Books Collectives for having me. And then thank you, Lindsay. You are a powerhouse. I told you I was a fan when I met you. And for you to take the time to do this tonight means a lot to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure.
So back to your question. So, thank you for saying that in reading the book, you felt like you heard my voice and you could picture it. Growing up, in Haiti, I was born in Haiti. I left at the age of 7, like you mentioned, and moved to Massachusetts, of all places. Like you would think we're going from the warm weather to maybe another warm weather, but no, my mother had different plans. So we went to Boston in January. I didn't speak a word of English, and Sesame Street really became how I learned the English language, because I couldn't go to school right away because I didn't have enough of a English foundation in order to understand what, the lessons were. But the best thing that ever happened to me, honestly.
And you also talk about early on, you keep saying, like, put a pin in that. This is a pattern, the relationships of men in your life, from your grandfather to your father to men that you ultimately select.
Yes.
But you talk early on about how there was a fire lit in you at a young age, that you had experienced tremendous happiness, but deep sorrow. What was that fire, and what lit it?
The fire, to this day, I cannot explain. I think it was just curiosity and wanting to see what life is about. There was something that I was so curious about, but I didn't have the words or knew exactly what it was. But the patterns are real. The patterns were real in watching my grandfather and then my dad. And when I talk about the pattern, it's the men leaving the women and, going on and having different lives, and the women picking up the pieces as we do. and putting them together and raising children and keep moving forward for sure. I learned that early on.
And I would venture to say, because you don't necessarily talk about early on the church aspect, but you talk a lot about faith throughout the book. And even at one point, and I actually want to go in two different ways. So let's start first with this particular moment when you're driving in the car and you're looking at yourself in the side view mirror and you say, that was God in that moment. I actually couldn't even believe that moment. Just kind of give people a snippet of that awesome story.
So we moved to Miami when I was 16, about to turn 17. And a friend of mine who I became friends with said, hey, there's a commercial that they're shooting. Do you want to be an extra? And I was like, what's an extra? And he said, you're really in the background of the commercial and I pay $75 a day. And I was like, sign me up. That's a lot of money. And so they had principal casts that were, in the forefront of the commercial. And by the second day, I got enough courage to go up to the pretty black girl. And I said, I want to do what you're doing. How do I do that? And she was not having it. She was not there to help me. And I found out the agency she was with, and it was Irene Marie, and they were in Fort Lauderdale. So I asked my mom to borrow her car. I decided I was going to drive up there and find out, how do you do this? I really want to do this. And as I was driving to Fort Lauderdale, I stopped at a red light. I poked my head outside the window to check my makeup. At that time,
make sure you were looking cute.
Yeah, I know, making sure, all is good. Listen, this is way before glam. I did the best I could. And I was reaching in my, on the, passenger seat to get my purse to look for my lip gloss. And at the same time, a hand came into the car, scared the hell out of me. And it was a woman in the stoplight behind me, saw when I poked my head out, and she said, you should be a model. She gives me a card, and the card is the exact location that I was going to without an appointment, without pictures, without anything. So that was God.
I love that story. And then there are many other times throughout the book. There's a particular time that you talked about how you leaned heavily on your resilience and relied enormously on your deep faith in God's mercy and grace. Talk to us about that sense of faith and your relationship with God that you do explore a little bit throughout the book.
Yeah, for one thing, being Haitian, period, you are built with faith, because Haitians, we have been through so much, but there's one constant, and it's faith, and it's believing and hope. And I think that's in our blood. I don't know how that came about, but that's one of it. So I've seen my family have faith. I've seen, in the worst situations, people are still holding their head up and still having faith. So that was built in me and had to be nurtured and cultivated as I grew. And I realized as I was getting older, I needed to depend on that more, because nothing was guaranteed, right? I didn't have anybody in the industry in terms of family that could help me. It was really faith and perseverance and resiliency. I mean, that's something that I feel like I carry with me, and as we all do, but I think I push through no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's really important for me.
And you talk about in the book having some brass balls, and I feel like you do, because in just so many different things. First of all, even that this is not your first book, obviously, when you were, a mother of the young sons, your twin boys, I believe it was at that point when you decided, I want to find books with characters who look like my son. And so you're like, so then I'll create it, because I don't see that.
Who is that? Who does that?
And I loved, and I did the same thing. I did the same thing with children's books. But then at what point did you decide, what? I'm going to share my story, because it's kind of easier to do a children's book or do a book about something that's not about yourself, but to really look inward and then share all of this with the world. Because, I think even with Housewives, you can kind of shield a little bit and show what you want, right? But in this, you're kind of like, here I am, world.
Woo! Listen, Lindsay, I had many a nights where I woke up in a cold sweat going, do I really want to share that? Do I really want to do that? But I've always been an open book. And, you can't write a memoir and not truly be authentic and talk about the things that I've been, that I've gone through. And I think those very things are the things that have made me who I am. So I can't shy away from it. Yeah, there were some stories that I was like, "Ooh, I thought I had some peace around it." And therefore, oh yeah, I can talk about that. And then come to find out, well, no, I didn't really have all that peace that I thought I had. So parts of it was cathartic, and parts of it, I had to share it because it's my journey. There's no perfect world. There's lots of ups and downs, and but at the same time, I'm human, and that's what I want people to connect with.
And that's what comes through in the pages, just your authenticity, which I think that people are going to really find so refreshing and connect with. I'm curious because I think there is a part when you're talking about your oldest son, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it was, certainly difficult to write about. But was there one aspect that you thought this is really difficult to, I imagine cathartic at the same time, but really difficult to share and expose?
Yeah, I mean, with my son Oliver, who you're referring to, he had a really tough time and, drug addiction, and that's always hard to deal with. And let me tell you, there were times where I sort of felt like I had an out of body experience because I had to, put on a front in one aspect because I had to support my family and work and be this person, be a professional person. And then on the other end, I was dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of, like, as a parent, seeing your child lost and you can only help so much. We did everything we could. And I wanted to share this story, but I also wanted to respect Oliver's privacy. It's his story to tell if he's ever ready to share the complete story. But I also had to share it because we went through a lot, and it's amazing. He's on the other side of it and he's doing so well. And that's another reason why I chose to share it, because I know a lot of families go through this. And I wanted to give hope because that's all I had for the longest time is hope and prayer. I thought God was like, girl, you again? Like, because we all prayed so much, my sisters, my mom, everybody. And for him to be on the other side, I wanted to give families hope that you can come through it.
And just a reminder to everybody, we are talking about Garcelle's latest book, Love Me As I Am. And I want to ask that everybody would put questions in because we're going to have a chance in a few moments you can ask your own questions. You can put them in and I'll read them to Garcelle and we can get your instantaneous answer here. So I want to talk about also, you said how your biggest regret is that you didn't ask your mom more questions before she passed away in 2008. What would you have asked her, and how do you feel like that would have informed your life and your decisions?
I would have asked her a lot. I grew up in a household where we were seen and not heard, right? Just culturally, that was how we were brought up. Kids, you don't listen to grown folks' business. You do your thing and they do their thing. But I would have loved to have known my dad's side of the story. I didn't grow up where I went from house to house. I only lived with my mom because my dad wasn't in the picture until he came back when I was 14. And I would have loved to have asked her. I knew he was the love of her life, but I would have liked to have known, like, their happy moments, what she thought was the reason why he left. Just things that, maybe would have informed me and left me a little bit more open to him. When he did come back, I was definitely not open to connecting with him. And I regret that. And I don't have a lot of regrets because I feel like everything happens the way it should and we learn lessons. But that's the one that I wish I had asked her more questions. And also, I wish I had given him a chance.
One thing that I found personally, there are actually a number of things that I personally related to, but I was often the only Black girl in school growing up initially for elementary school in particular, and had those awkward moments. And so I really felt like the moments that you embrace now, that you talk about going back and telling your younger self, I think that is such an affirmation for the young girls who might read this book too. Give us a sense, because I know you actually write a letter that you sign and write directly to your younger self. Give us a sense of that letter, that little snippet for the people who have.
I was a big chicken when I was a little girl. I was scared of a lot of things. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of just a lot of different things. And I think what I really would have told my younger self is to not be so scared that it's all going to work out. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but walk in with a little bit more confidence. I mean, I actually got that confidence as I got older, but I would have liked to have had it a little younger. I think I watch my kids now and they're so much more confident at their age, and I think it's a different generation, right? They know who they are. They're vocal, they're woke, all that stuff. And I was just this little girl, like, waiting for a chance. And then I pick a job where it's like I say, it's a pick me job. You're always like, pick me at an audition, pick me here and there. So it's interesting that was my path. But I would have told her to be a little bit less fearful, because it's going to be okay.
And also, you kind of have a message here, again, something that I related to, having a son and trying to raise a son who will be a dream guy for some very fortunate and blessed young lady at some point one day. And you talked at one point, and I'm going to let you put it in your words, but the necessity to actually instill kind of that courage and strength, and at the same time fulfilling that emotional side as well.
Yes. I mean, I feel like I am trying to pay it forward for the women that, come in their lives. I'm sure you're doing that as a mom too. And so with that comes respect, compassion, kindness. She has to be able to say yes and no when she wants to, right? All those things. And, again, growing up, like if you cried, you were like, don't cry, or I'm going to give you a reason to cry. And I think especially for the boys, we have to allow them to have emotions and not feel bad about that, because then they become the husbands that don't show any emotions, and you're begging and trying to get it out. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to raise the man I wish I married.
Now, I want to just see if there's a way, because I'm seeing along the side. Do you see questions? Because I'm only seeing where it says be sure to submit your questions.
Ask questions. It says ask questions on. I'm not technically challenged, so
I just want to make.
Oh, I see questions, but now I don't see you.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I need to look.
I lost
questions some way. Let's see. Ask questions. I see 5 here.
You still see me?
Okay, great. All right, I still see you. Okay. So sorry, I just have to turn you this way. Can you see me now?
No, but that's okay. I think I did something.
Okay. So how do you deal with the backlash from telling some of the stories? I found myself sticking up for you in the shade room comments, LOL. And that is from Michaela Robinson.
First of all, Michaela, thank you so much for having my back, girl. I don't read comments. I really try to stay away from them. Sometimes if I'm sitting around with my glam team and where, they'll look at comments and they'll tell me the good ones, but I try to stay away from it. Listen, you can't please everybody. And I'm in an industry where I'm in a fishbowl. People are going to have opinions. People use their computers and their phones as weapons to say whatever they want. And what I find sometimes really tough is that they can see a 3-minute, 3-second segment somewhere and they think that defines me. And so I try not to read. But Michaela, thank you.
And the next question is from Sasha Elise. And she says, what's the hardest part of putting everything out there, in the book or on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills?
It's all hard. It's all hard. But you know what? That's kind of like, I think we all do that. Even if you're not a celebrity, you put things on Instagram, on Facebook or LinkedIn. I feel like it's a new normal. But yeah, sometimes people can hurt your feelings with what they say, but I think it comes with the territory. I try to focus on the positive,
As you should. And by the way, can I just say too, you have to be like the hottest grandmother alive. I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw that you're a grandma. Like, oh my goodness. But that's beside the point. Okay.
That's beside the point. But thank you.
Next question.
I love being a grandma.
It's from Fabian. And Fabian says, you are so successful. How do you juggle all of your projects while being a mom, especially raising children in this time, trying to be present, etc.? It's Fabian from UNICEF. So happy I'm able to join and watch you, by the way.
Hi, Fabian. I love that name, by the way. You got to prioritize. I'm really organized. I have to be organized. That's the only way I can do everything. So my calendar has the boys' games, their practices, their tournaments. We try to spend time. I feel like now that the boys are older, my quality time with them is driving them to and from games or to practices, because then it's one-on-one. We're not distracted. So I try to make it up when I can. And now that they're 14, they need me a little less in terms of hands-on, but it's my favorite job. My best job is being a mom before anything.
And the sexiest grandma alive too, right? Okay. So
I did not say that.
so Marie, what does your family think about the book, specifically the stories that include them?
That's really interesting. I think they're proud of me for being able to achieve, what I have been able to achieve. But also, the stories, I think everybody's okay with it. I haven't gotten any weird calls. No, they're all pretty proud of me and supportive. It's been great.
All right, the next one is from Steph. He says, good evening, East Coaster here. Thank you for sharing your story. You have a production company. Are you accepting pitch ideas? If so, what is the best way to secure a meeting?
Absolutely. DM me on IG and I'll give you my assistant's information.
All right. Daphne Bryant asks, do you plan to translate this book in French?
Oh, Daphne, I never thought of that. I don't know, but I'll think about it. That's not a bad idea.
Sasha Elise says, what gave you the idea for your podcast? Besides obviously enjoying
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I used to do this once a month. I would have a bunch of girlfriends over on Sundays when I didn't have the boys. Or sometimes I would do couples or an eclectic group. And after every time we would eat, we would vent, we would gossip. And every time someone was leaving, they would say, you should do this. This is a show. And I'd go, yeah. And then life would happen and we didn't do anything with it. So then when my producing partner and I decided to do a sizzle reel to sell the idea, we sold it to MGM and they loved it. And then COVID happened. So then they said, why don't we incubate it as a podcast and get some buzz and hopefully sell it after the pandemic. We thought the pandemic was going to last for 3 months.
Right. We all did.
Yeah.
All right. We got another one from Daphne. What are the Haitian values you kept and which ones have you put aside?
Oh, okay. So that's a great one. The Haitian, definitely I let my kids speak up. They have a right, as long as they're respectful. I really want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and that's important to me. I wasn't allowed to do that. And I think traditionally, the whole manners, respect, and we have Haitian food on the weekends. That's the only time I have enough time to cook. So the values are the core things that are important, being respectful and having manners and faith and saying "sac passe" when we see each other.
What's your best meal? What do you cook?
Oh, I do a couple of things. Sometimes I do griot. Sometimes I do rice and beans and plantains and a stewed steak or a stewed chicken. Lumbi, which is a conch, which is my favorite, and I don't know how to cook that. So that's only when I go visit my sister Gladys do I get that.
All right. This is just a comment, not a question, from Marie. And she just says, we are very proud of you in Haiti. Keep climbing.
Thank you.
Okay, Danita. She says, hi, Garcelle. My mom and I love you so much. What was the hardest chapter to write for you?
Oh, the hardest chapter to write for me was, I think going through my divorce. I mean, that was a really, really tough time for me. And that's something that I didn't want to relive, but it was important. It's an important part of my story because my kids came out of that marriage and they're the best. So that was the hardest because I didn't want to go back to reliving it. Because Mike and I are also so good now. We really co-parent beautifully. We put the kids first, and the kids have benefited from that.
Speaking of that, this is, first of all, I think my favorite chapter in this, when you talk about your ideal wedding day.
Yeah.
Smell in the room, the crispy sheets, the breakfast that comes in, the flowers.
The note. Talk about manifestation. Let's see if it happens, Lindsay.
How important is that for you to have that day again? I know you talk about in the.
Yeah. If I'm going to be completely honest, I go back and forth on that, I mean, I love the idea. I love love. I loved being married. I love that aspect of someone having your back. I don't know if I actually need the marriage part. I definitely want a healthy, happy relationship, monogamous, emotionally available relationship. So I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to God. But if I hear God say to me, as clearly as you're talking to me, this is the one, Garcelle, that I'm doing it. I'm going all out, veil and all. Maybe a black dress this time.
All right, this is from Andrina. She says, "You are one of my favorite, Garcelle. Your bounce back muscle is amazing. What is your number one strategy you use to keep your confidence intact and self-love a priority?"
Ooh, focusing on the good, focusing on the good. I feel so many times, and for a long time, I was replaying stories to myself that weren't positive, and holding on to stories that no longer served me, right? And so I read this book called The Untethered Soul by Michael E. Singer. And that really helped me to sort of break that scenario. If we all pay attention throughout the day of things we tell ourselves, check to see how many things are actually positive, right? Because I think self-doubt, we're our worst critic, where we didn't do this right, I wasn't great with this, or whatever. And I think it was when I really started telling myself different stories and feeling like, what do I have to lose? Who do the disease to please I talk about in my book, wanting to always be the good girl and the nice girl, and sacrificing sometimes myself because I wanted to make someone else feel better. I think once I was able to let go of some of that, I'm still a work in progress, that I felt like my confidence, or what people see, is truly, who I've become.
And I just think that you radiate that, and suffer from that inner saboteur, right? That our narrator and how see what's going on can be so negative, and often our. Okay, this is that might be the last one that we have time for.
Okay.
This is from what was the one? There was a question here that I just saw that I thought was a good one. Oh yes, where is that? I'm not seeing the question, but it was that. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
Okay, if you could write another chapter, what would it be?
If I could write another chapter, what would it be? That I found my soulmate. That's the
Okay.
chapter I want next.
That is, I want to read that. I want that happy ending for you, Garcelle.
Thank you. My kids are going to go off to college soon. I'm going to need someone around the house.
The company, right?
Exactly.
I promise you are going to enjoy. And we didn't even get to like some of the juicy parts of the Housewives, but we had to save some for you to have to go out and actually read the book yourself. But love me as I am. You will truly adore and enjoy this book. I feel like you leave a little bit of yourself inside the pages here, and I so it's a nice little. I don't get a lot of time to read, for fun in my spare time, so I enjoy. I was kind of like savoring this time.
Oh, I appreciate that, and thank you again, Lindsay, for taking the time. Means the world to me, truly.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Love me as I am. All right.
Bye.